what am I? I'm the senior Becton Fellow, which doesn't pay very well. And I am, most importantly, I am Ursula's friend, which is a great privilege. So Ursula has had a remarkable career, and I'm sure before you came here, you Googled her and you saw that she has been a groundbreaking individual, done things that at the start of her career would have been unthinkable, has accomplished an enormous amount, and paved the way for what many of you will achieve in the future. And I think in many ways changed some of the cultural dynamics in the U.S. corporate culture. She was the CEO of Xerox. She is now was the first African American woman to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, which is actually pretty remarkable.
Unfortunately, I'm still the only one, and that's a little bit of a problem.
We're going to talk more about that. And is on the board of Uber and ExxonMobil, and is the chairman of a company that I used to have a slight involvement with called VEON. That's a developing, well, not all, I guess,
it's all developing.
Is Italy developing?
Yeah. Italy's developing too.
If we consider Italy a developing market, it's a developing market telecom company that's needs the strong leadership of somebody with Ursula's experience and most of all character. So I think I have a bunch of questions that I'm going to ask Ursula, and then we're going to let you leave a lot of time for you to all ask questions, because your questions will be more interesting to you than my questions will be to you. But I want to just say one thing that sort of goes through my questions, and I suspect will be at core of many of your questions, and that is how important. I'm going to tell you the answer first, and then we'll talk about it.
This is a typical Tim
I'm going to tell you the answer first, and that is character is enormously important in Ursula's story and in her achievements and her ability to overcome barriers and the enormous respect that she has from peers and friends, me among them. So let me start with thanking you for coming and saying what a great privilege it is to be able to host you. And let me start with an easy one. Talk about the hard parts of running a large, complex public company. What's hard about it? What's the hardest thing about it?
Balance is the hardest thing. Balance in looking at any problem, dealing with any individual, dealing with any opportunity. This idea that generally, when I was growing up through my life, I could make decisions based on something, what I liked, what my husband liked, what my project needed. And when you run a big company, very few things are as singular as that, and you have to always average out your decision making across many different constituents. And I'm not necessarily a good averager. I don't like this kind of that we have to not do what is very obviously right for the employee or very obviously right for the shareholder or for the customer. You have to kind of figure it all together, and then when you come up with a solution, it's kind of 90% right for everybody. That's a failure for me, and I don't like those kinds of things. So it was a big deal for me to step back and realize that perfection is not really what we were shooting. Perfection of any of these pillars was not what we were shooting for. That you had to kind of balance it out. That's one. The second is that oftentimes in business, you're dealing with people who are not well informed. The vast majority of people that you deal with are not well informed. Employees are not well informed primarily because we don't give them all the information to be well informed. Customers are definitely poorly informed. Competitors are poorly informed. The public markets are poorly informed. And it's just difficult to deal with the fact that people ask you stupid questions. And you have to spend a lot of time explaining these things at the very rudimentary level to people. Instead of, my ideal would be, you hired me to do this job, you trust me to do this job, I'm skilled to do this job, so if you're going to ask me whether I actually checked whether 1 and 1 is 2 every single time, then we should probably get somebody else. But it turns out that they ask everybody that, so it's not just me personally. So this idea that you have to kind of average your decisions, and the second is that you have to spend a lot of time with people who are not well informed. That's not nice, by the way. That's a very unnice thing to say, but it is the truth.
Well, I'm sure in behavioral economics, there's a really elegant way to say it, but I don't know what it is.
I'm an engineer. I got my BS and MS in engineering, and fortunately never even knew that there was a class called behavioral economics. It sounds odd.
It meant that you had to behave, and so you skipped it.
I skipped it. That's right, I did skip it.
So on a slightly different, from a slightly different perspective, talk about life choices that were hard.
These are the biggest ones.
You've had a remarkable career, but it could not have been easy. It could not have been easy to be who you were at the time. And just like all of us who've had the challenges of personal and family and business all competing. So what are the tough life choices and what can we learn from your experience?
Yeah, I tell you, this is something that when it is happening, you don't pay attention to it. So you kind of power through it based on some normalcy that you consider normal, something that you consider normal. Then you look back at it in chunks of time and you realize that you've made these amazingly difficult, challenging, and sometimes unchangeable life choices. So I say now to all of you in the room, so think about it. Think forward about what you're doing today so that you can look back at it and at least be in the right ball field of where you want to be living, right? And what you want to be doing and how you want to feel. For me, I had some of the best life choices that I made and then some of the worst. The best was that I was really good at something. It was math and this kind of definitiveness of mathematics. I liked it from the beginning that you couldn't debate with me whether the answer was right generally because the answer's right. I mean, it's 1 + 1 is 2. You can do all of this stuff with behavioral economics and writing and all of this stuff. And there are 50 people who can debate with you whether the answer is right. I don't like that kind of living. I like straightforward. So I picked, and I knew that about myself. Even before I knew about math in these ways, I didn't like this ambiguity. And so I picked a career. I studied, I fell in love with, and picked something to do that was right in my wheelhouse. And I liked it. And I stuck with it, which was really, really good and really important. Second life choice that I had to make was who I would marry. Now, this sounds crazy, right? Because everybody has to figure out who they're going to marry, or not, right? I mean, it's not the kind of thing, somebody doesn't generally do this for you. But I tell you what, you get wooed with a lot of people who are, I call them, it's like a fancy car. And basically, you should buy the jalopy. And I married the jalopy, and he's still going. I mean,
we're not going to quote you.
Yeah, don't you dare. Yeah, I mean, my husband doesn't care. And what I meant by that, because there was a lifestyle choice that I had to make about where I wanted to live and what kind of life I wanted to have. I wanted to have a life that had a family in it at its nucleus. I wanted to have a life that had me and my husband having something to do with these children, not, kind of like outsourcing the entire, we outsourced some of it. We didn't want to outsource the entire piece. I would love to have, and I found a person who actually had a little bit of affinity to what I was doing. So he was a scientist, technical person as well. And I wanted somebody who was a little bit more urban than suburban. Now, I thought about these things, right? And then I found a man who actually fit them. He actually found me, or we found each other, I guess. And stayed that way. That's the second life choice. And the third life choices that I messed up on was that I had to decide what kind of family I wanted to have. So how many children? And literally, I thought that all we could do was manage a small number of them, 1 or 2 or 3, and that was wrong. We had 2, and it was a mistake. We should have had more. We could have dealt with more easily. It would have been fine to have more. We would have been happier. I think we're happy now, but we would have been even happier with more kids. So that was, on that side, was a whole bunch of thought about my life, having nothing to do with how much money I wanted to make, about none of that stuff. It was all about when I look back, what did I want to feel, how did I want to feel when I woke up in the morning? And I knew it had to do with having a family and being in a certain place to live, and et cetera. I also had to make life choices about what I had to give up, because there was a lot of stuff that I had to give up. And as a black woman, it was very obvious early that you have to kind of make some choices. And my husband was really good at this. My husband is 20 years older than I am, which was really useful, and still is highly useful. But he would tell me all the time, this is not something you should fight. What do you mean I shouldn't fight it? I mean, it's my hair, it's my dress, it's my diction, it's my thing, it's me, who I am, and that's who I am, so they should just accept it. And it's not that clear. And as black women, as black women, there are more difference points that people look at. Men, black or white, and women, obviously white or non-black, that look at you and you have to kind of make some choices. Hair was a big one, right? So if you, and dress, I mean, the 2 examples, you know how this goes, right? So you enter work and you start to move up and everybody looks a certain way. Most of them are men, so you can't really, the good news is you have some options here because you can't really wear everything that the man wears, but there is a standard. There is a standard. And in the beginning, I literally did the standard. The skirt with the thing with the little bow tie, that the women wore, I call it the man suit, and the woman's suit. And early on, I had to determine, I couldn't feel comfortable with that. I couldn't kind of ease into it at all. So I was never feeling too good about it. And I, one day, just kind of flipped totally and did the whole, colors and, things that I felt comfortable with. My husband, who wasn't my husband at the time, said to me, this is going to go over really well. What? And I had cut my hair by that time, too, because I had a lot of hair and going through all of the stuff of processing, all of the stuff that you normally do. And he said, this is going to go over really well. He said, you look like a woman with a dashiki, because that's basically the kind of goal that I had. And it turns out it was a struggle for people. It was a struggle, particularly when I went into the boardroom. It was a big deal when I went into the boardroom, because the boardroom, I went into the boardroom early in my career. I was the assistant to the chairman after about 10 years, and I was in the boardroom all the time. And I was just like, just a regular old New York City person. And that was not appropriate for the boardroom. And I had a great guy in the boardroom. His name is Vernon Jordan, a friend of both of ours, who would call me on these things consistently.
He, by the way, he calls me on the same thing.
Same thing, does he?
Same thing.
Yeah.
Luckily, he's not here to critique.
He would critique you because you don't have
Exactly.
a tie. Yeah, he'd be really upset with Tim's attire. And I guess doing it to a man is pretty okay, but doing it to a woman, he was pretty. One day I went in and I didn't have hose on. Hose. Who calls them hose now, right? Hose. He says, in all of the places I go, women wear hose to work. And I said to him, it's good. It's interesting. Can't say much to Vernon, so you basically just, next time I saw him, I was wearing hose, though. Because you do pay attention.
You do pay attention.
Because he's doing it from a perspective, it's important to try his space, right, a little bit. And I did stick with that. A lot of things.
When he suggested it for me, I didn't take that advice.
Yeah,
no.
I did. I was very compliant, generally very compliant.
So just, the boardroom, your perspective, having American Express, all these, turnarounds, iconic companies, the whole gamut. If you boil it down, tell us about the 3 or 4 attributes of across the spectrum, high-performing leaders?
Yeah.
What are the common things that you've observed? People who've worked for you, people who've performed well, running companies that you've been on the board of. What are the attributes that?
The number one is a clear point of view. It's a clear point of view about what they want, how they want their company to look, how they want it to operate, what good looks like, what bad looks. A point of view that they can absolutely, you can tell it's them. You can tell it's them. Many leaders avoid, before they become CEO, by the way, this is one of my big things I look for. People actually avoid having things stick to them, right? Because you don't want to say it because then it becomes yours. You want to do it because then it becomes yours if it goes wrong. So I'm going to try to skirt my way around a strong point of view on something or anything. One of the things that great leaders have that I've been associated with is a point of view. And that's not only about their businesses, but it's also about social policy, it's about education, it's about healthcare, it's about everything. They have a point of view. And they are not afraid to step in it. And it's such a big deal. And it is so rare today. I listen to a lot of people speak, and I'm always at the end of it saying, well, okay, so what do you do? What do you stand for? What is the point here? So I want to make a lot of money. So do I. We all got that. We want to, have great high customer satisfaction scores, so and so. But what is the method that you're going to do that? What are the things that you will never break? What's the stride you'll never break if that's what you're trying to get? That's a big deal for me. Second is that you have to be able to select and then act on getting great people. The best leaders can get, I tell you what, it's amazing when you look at some of these companies, ExxonMobil, American Express, Google, I think it's pretty good today, Uber. And you can tell for sure early whether they're going to have a really rough time or an easy time. And if their leaders can't get great leaders around them, it's really going to be a difficult situation. So getting the best people, and they can do this, it's amazing. They can, without paying them, tons of money, they pay them competitive money, but they didn't buy them. They actually convinced them with a story, with a point of view, with a belief structure that they should come and join the team. It's huge, it's huge. And then the third is fearlessness. It's associated with the first, but if you don't have a point of view and you're not willing to defend it, go, because everybody we hire is smart. Everybody we hire is you guys, right? You guys from the 50 best schools in the world. So I'm not looking for smart people. I mean, we don't go to colleges looking for dumb people. We go to, and really, by the time you get here, you're doing okay. So the question is, what's going to make Nana better than Vance, or not better, but better for me than Ruth or the people in Natalie are? It's going to be the fact that there's some fit, some little thing that you have that I need. And we've spent our time praising how brilliant people are. People say all the time, that guy's really brilliant. And I'm like, and 50 other people are really brilliant. I need a brilliant person who can sit in front of me and have a debate that makes me change my mind, that allows me to open my perspective a little bit, that fills some big gap that I have, because I definitely have these massive gaps. And getting great people who have points of view, who are really, really good at what they do, and they can fit in, is a really big deal about a company. So
I'm gonna combine. I've got too many questions, so I'm gonna combine a couple of them. So let me read them all, and you answer them as you see fit. So just think about you've seen all around the world markets and economic structures, and think about the things that you, not as a CEO, but as somebody that cares about the world, would change in the structures of the way business operates and markets operate. Secondly, the really big struggle I see often in our strategy decisions is sort of, how do you weigh the short-term economics versus the long-term economics? And then finally, in that same vein, tell us, try to articulate for us the value of activist investors.
The value of them. Interesting. I'll get to that one last. The first thing I would
You could also say none.
by the way, I'll get to that one last. You know, the things that we spend a lot of time in business talking about tax policy and trade being good or bad and all that stuff like that. So when I read this question earlier, the thing that popped into my mind first that I would do if I could actually change from a business leader standpoint, something is change our education system almost everywhere in the globe, particularly the K through 12 system. We are failing. This is such an amazing, we're messing this up broadly. Even the good schools are messing it up, right? And there is something that I think it's kind of, people are thinking about it like certain people deserve a better one than the other one. It's kind of like a strange set of math that we're currently doing about education. We have to change it. We're spending too much money on it, we're getting too little return from it, and we are definitely not educating broad-based, well-thinking, contributing people in society. That has to change. And so the first three are going to be social. The second one is, literally in this world, you should be able to get three things. One is water, the other is food, and the third is some form of basic health care. Some form of, you know, not everybody's going to be able to get an MRI or whatever the hell the latest thing is, but to have no penicillin, right, or whatever the thing that keeps you from going blind is, that's really easy to distribute around the world, is amazing to me. Particularly when we can do it, and we know we can do it affordably. And we know every study has shown, every single one, there's not one that shows that if you give people these four things, basic education, food, that they will actually cost less, significantly less over their life. And we still every day get up and we make these decisions to do, well, we're going to fund this school with like nothing. And you say, but I know what's going to happen, right? These 50 kids are going to be burdens to society for a lot longer than not. So if we could figure out a way to get past this idea that certain people deserve things and other people don't, that would be really good. I don't think anybody deserves a living. I think you deserve a chance. You deserve access. It's part of the responsibility of people who have, all of us in this room, of governments, for sure, to allow that people have access. And then we can start running the race. But right now we say, get on the track, you don't have shoes, you didn't eat enough, you can't see, you had no medicine, and we say, run the race. And then we say you fail when you fail. And go, oh, I understand why we fail. So I think if we could figure out a way to do this, I don't know how to do it yet, but if we could figure out a way to do this, it would be phenomenal. And I think that there is a solution here, right? But like I said, I haven't spent enough time to break it yet. That markets, I think that I'm speaking from the United States now. I'm going to speak from the US. We have a set of tax policies a little bit better recently that are actually back-asswards, absolutely stupid. We actually protect ourselves against incursions of other people to our country. This is like the worst thing in the world. How silly is this? We have 300 million people. The world has 7 billion. So I would protect, what are we going to protect? If suppose all the 7 billion other people protected us from going in, we would have to figure out a way to make our great living with the 320 million people that we have. We can't do it. We need open, balanced, in some cases, putting us at a disadvantage, access to other markets. I don't want to do that. I don't want to put us at a disadvantage, but in the short term, you may think that. So our trade and tax policy has morphed into this kind of hodgepodge of non-competitive, protective, very, very complicated versus, just put your foot forward, fight hard and win. And if other people win, fine. But generally, we can probably do fairly well if we play. That's the second. So tax and trade, absolutely for sure. And then the third is military. You'll be surprised to hear that I think that we should have an extremely strong military. We should have these guys generically, men and women, extremely well trained, extremely well funded with really great equipment. And we should just collect taxes with some governance structure. And, not because I want us to fight, because we get a lot of really good stuff when the military actually has a problem to solve. microwave, airplanes, these kinds of things. Part of it is that. We get a lot of good technology from it, but the second is that the world is not nice. Even though it's getting nicer since the two Koreas are getting friendlier to each other, that's actually pretty good. It's not a bad thing.
Activist investors.
Yeah, I find them generally very useless. Of course, I'm serious. Because the thing about, I think it's so amazing. They come up with a theory. They must think we're absolutely crazy. They come and say, we've done an analysis of your company. If you fire everyone, you'll make more money. And they say to you, I did the analysis. I'm going to send this to the newspapers if you don't agree with me. I'm going to show how badly you're running the company, because instead of having 10,000 people, you have 30,000 people. You should just get rid of the 20,000 people. And I'm going to make it personal. This is the way it is. I'm going to make it personal. So not only are we going to talk about you and how badly you manage, we're going to talk about your board and your whole management team, and we don't have to tell the truth. We don't have a whole bunch of filters. We can say whatever the hell we want. And I know you can't respond with whatever the hell you want, and that's the way the game is played. So I had one in, and my approach was the following. Say whatever the hell anything you want. The only thing that can happen is the board can fire me, or the shareholders can fire me. So I'm going to do what the board and shareholders hired me to do, not you, but all of them. And if they don't want me here, I just leave. Because the worst thing that could possibly happen is that you have to look for a new job. And that's not the worst thing in the world at my point in life. So I think that if we had more value-based, so if you're doing something like dumping whatever in the oceans, I think that's all fine. That's not generally what we're fighting about. Generally, activists don't fight about that at all. They have no point of view about that at all. They have a point of view about some arcane thing that you're doing, not because you're stupid, but because you're balancing all this stuff, right? You have employees. So my company was in Rochester, New York. We had at some point in 3 companies in this town that employed 150,000 people in this town. By the way, by the time it was all done, you probably employ 15,000 people. So what happened to the other 135,000 people? We fired them. Now, we're paying for them because we're paying taxes that allow them to have whatever the heck it is that they have. I think that there's a graceful way to do this, a more graceful way to do this. Activists will not allow you to do that. Neither will quarterly earnings allow you to do that. Neither will this focus on the short term allow you to do that. And I have always said, last time I was here was many, many years ago, and I said, if that's what you want, I can do that math equation really easily. I can tell you how to make the most money in any quarter, on any company. I can do this for sure. You may not want the company that you'll have if I do that 4 times in a row. Almost surely you won't. I can do that. We spend $1.5 billion in R&D. I would cut that in a minute. We pay healthcare where you have a $5 copay. That's gone. $5 copay, well, you can pay $50. We'll just think about all the things you could do to make the number big. And if that's what we're shooting for, it doesn't take a lot of thinking. You don't have to go to Yale's management school to do that. You literally can do that. My daughter can do that. You show her the top 50 things. She's not 25, so she could definitely do it. When she was younger, you show her the top things you smoke. You say, she say, why are you spending that money? We say, well, because 5 years from now we're going to get a new product. She goes, oh, 5 years from now, take that out. That goes. Okay, this other one, well, because these people need special things, they get, take that out. My point is that we have tuned our ear to this thing called the dollar, and we've tuned our ear to this thing called a dollar in a very short amount of time, in 90 days. And we actually, all of us, invest in things for the most money in 90 days.
Well, not all of us.
Not all of us. Neither do I, by the way, neither do I. But a lot of us do. It's ridiculous. I just think it's ridiculous. And we have to, there is enough of us that could stop this. There's enough of us that can say, I'm not going to do it. Fine, fire them all. Fire all the CEOs. Bring in all the dollars guys, which we did. Kimberly Clark, there's so many examples of this. And you look at what happened afterward, the company doesn't exist. The town doesn't exist. The education system is screwed up. I just don't think companies are that's not the reason why we're here. And if they want that to be the reason why we're here, to get somebody else to run the place. That's my point of view.
I agree. I'm going to use my prerogative to ask you one last question and then invite everybody here to jump in. When will there be more female CEOs?
When men stop screwing it up.
Should I leave now?
No. And women stop screwing it up. Because this is one that is so amazing to me. First of all, there is a wave now that's relatively unstoppable, meaning good news is that you just look at the way that the pyramid is filling from entry up, even though we do have a problem at like 7 to 11 years into your career where we kind of, everything goes to hell in a haywire. I don't know what happens and then people leave and whatever the heck it is. But take that out. Just about every other place, we are filling the level to the point where you're going to have to make a conscious decision to not hire a woman. To get, you're going to have to say, well, we're just not going to do that. Because we have somebody in the C-suite is going to be a woman just because we have a lot more lawyers graduating, a lot more finance people, a lot more engineers. So it's going to happen that way. But it should be quicker, right? And the way that you make it quicker is that we have to literally all get off our butts. And I'm going to give you the men and the women. The woman thing, I'll do women first. That's amazing to me is that they actually define their self and their futures the way that men define them. So they actually set up a field. It's the most amazing thing. They set up a field and they define success the same exact way. How many people do I run? How much money do I make? How big is my organization? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they do that early in their careers. And they do the same. They go to study AI, which is what everybody's studying today. They study whatever MBAs or whatever the latest things are. And I say that we have to kind of step back individually and as a group and think about what the world will need, so we're not running after the men to become the next programmers, right? If we would have thought about this a little bit as women, we would have known that the world was going to become more socially based, right? So we're going to have to think a little bit more about how we include people, how we lead, et cetera. We would be ahead of that game, not behind it. But I think we're running behind trying to follow guys. We're trying to follow everything. And I say, try not to do that. I don't know how to not do it, but try not to do it. Men, the rules, I love this. The rules are set by them. They've defined the field themselves. And then I say this all the time, we have to be unequal in our response to the situation that you created. We have to be unequal to solve the problem. They say that's not fair. I literally just had this speech the other day at a company. I said, well, you can't do that. I said, well, why not? They say, well, that's inequality. I said, I understand that, but if you want women in the C-suite, if you want women in the CEO -3, you're going to have to differentially promote and hire women. There's no way you're going to get there. And Eric Schmidt did the math. I don't know if you saw the thing. 220 years will get balanced on pay. If we just do the normal process, that means you're never going to get balanced, right? So the way that you fix this is that you say, we're going to actually cheat. So instead of hiring 50% women and 50% men, we're going to hire 80% women. That's it. We're going to give differential raises to women because they're paid less than men. We're going to give them different opportunities. We're going to actually send them differentially to places because we want to make up this gap. And they say you can't do that because that's not fair. I said, but the rules are unfair that you set up. So I should be able to change the rules totally. No. I said, okay, fine. So what we do is we change the rules. Xerox, we did this thing called the Wilson Rule. So and by the way, we got sued. California, got sued in New York, got sued in most states. So, but we're still fighting them. The Wilson Rule, which said that every single outside hire and every promotion in the C-suite, so this is TSPM and higher, so what we call middle management and higher, had to have what was the Rooney Rule, right? So that, with the coaches, we called it the Wilson Rule. So we said we have to have a diverse slate. It didn't take 5 minutes for us to get sued, but we still try. We do it. We're sued in California, so you can't quite practice it that way in California. We're getting sued in New York. We're getting sued in Connecticut. So we're going to get sued all over the place, but it should work, right? And I think that the suits are reasonable because it shows how ridiculous this argument is, right? Because if you tell me that I can't make it up, I can't make up the ground, and you're going to be this way forever, and that's fair. That's what they're saying. And I'm saying, well, no, we should change the rules and make it such that it is fair, or at least balanced, and then we can define a whole new set of rules, and the answer is no. So, activists out, women and men have to kind of figure out a way to act differently toward, and I don't mean personally toward each other, but I mean in business. And by the way, it's not only women, it's blacks, this is where the problem comes in, right? Because there's a lot of people who have interests now, a lot of people who have capability. But that, I think, is a better opportunity than it is a problem. It just takes smart people to solve it. We can get people to the moon, we can do all kinds of things. We should be able to solve some of these social problems. Sorry. I'm ranting.
Who's first? Grace.
Sorry, I wanted to know that this is being live streamed, so please press the microphone button to speak.
So based on your interactions with employees that have advanced business degrees, do you see any gaps in business school education, things that we should be learning in business school but we're not? And if so, what are those things?
Yeah, lots of gaps. But I don't mean that as a necessarily a negative. There's some things that are negative. I think that it's better, getting better now. One of the things that I was always shocked at is how poorly people wrote. And I'm still surprised at how poorly people write. And it's just, to me, it was like my mother just would smack me. You know, if you did, it just shows basic education. And so one thing is how well people write, but outside of that basic stuff, the thing about schools is that they are built on a hierarchy more than not, right? So they're built on an A is better than a B is better than a C, right? And a 99 is better than a 98, and the world generally doesn't work that way. By the way, except for the most elite, it doesn't work that way. It works on the need for everybody to kind of figure out a way to get the best out of people. And this is getting better in business schools. It's getting a lot better in engineering schools because it was almost non-existent there. And this is this whole idea about a team. And I don't mean a forced team to do a project, because it is a team it's leading with everybody engaged. It's engaging with everybody engaged. And it's just something that we have to learn. There are not a lot of classes that you can do for this. This is, this is how you attack projects, what people expect from you, how you self-police yourselves, a big deal about who's included, who's not included. The biggest issues, in my opinion, are this, right? Because you've self-selected yourselves into this school. The school has selected you in. You don't have, you're not dumb, you're not mentally disturbed, you are already very well educated, probably have more education behind you than you can imagine, have had 5 good jobs. So now what the heck are they going to teach you? Some coursework? Not a lot. Not a lot. It's about how to live together, and it is so massively missing. I'm on the board of a tech company that I won't say the name of. And one of the things and I've been involved with lots of them, and I did this earlier. Old-fashioned companies are becoming, so leaders like me, I am this like old-fashioned leader. I am in massive demand. You wonder why? I have no idea about the stuff that they do in California, in the West Coast, none of that stuff, because I'm human. Because literally, somewhere in my education process and in my maturation as an adult, I was forced to adjust to other people around me. I had to make some choices in life that were reasonable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we have more and more, particularly well-educated people, who have been literally pathed out of competition, pathed out of failure. There's no way in the world that these kids have ever done anything where somebody told them, that's really bad. You're really not good at that sport, get out of it. So if we could, this is what you guys have to do. Because you know the stuff. The question is, how come some of you fail and others succeed? How come companies lose their way fundamentally? Lose their way. They have no idea what the hell they're there for. They make a ton of money and they do all bad because they have bad human dynamics. It's not about the law was unclear. Law is very clear. So I think schools have to teach this. Or I say stop at, get your 4-year degree and start working. We could teach you better. Industry could teach you better. So you come here because we want this high-performing, high-thinking, kind of analytical humans involved in our company, not these well, I could do it faster or better than, so Grace can do it faster or better than Vance, so we are gonna hire Grace. I'm like, I couldn't care less. I very rarely interview for what we call fitness. All of my interviews are fit, 100%. People always say to me, well, you didn't ask me anything about my CFO credentials. I'm like, my God, if you made it to this point, I shouldn't have to ask you a question about that, right? I want to know whether you know do you know what's going on in this company? Let me tell you the truth, because I don't want you whining in 6 months when you find out it's messed up. We hired you to fix it. That's what you're here for. And it's not going to be perfect. You have to work. These are the kind of things that I think schools have to teach. Am I the selector? You're the selector.
I'm the selector.
I don't want to get in trouble.
Thank you very much for being here. I was wondering if you, around your topic of activist investors and thinking about long-term versus short-term and the 90-day pressure. So I was wondering, first off, what were some of the actions that you took to, or actions that you recommend to try and relieve that pressure? You mentioned being able to kind of change that mindset. And I was also wondering on your thoughts on steps taken by, like, the CEO of Unilever, for example, trying to change the reporting of companies and how effective that is to change that mindset of that 90-day pressure.
Yeah, I don't think reporting has a whole lot to do with it. I mean, I think with companies make entirely too much available today. You can figure out anything about any company, follow it for a little while. And if you have the mental ability to read these friggin' MD and A's and the K's and the Q's, you can figure out everything, where we flush the toilets and everything. So I don't think it's that as much as it is how I changed it. I just didn't, I mean, sometimes I did it, of course, right? I mean, sometimes you have to fall in line. If there is particular pressure on the stock or the company or the board or the management, sometimes you go with it. But oftentimes I just didn't pay attention. And we gave guidance. And I would always give guidance. And there's a big debate about it. I mean, fine, if you don't give guidance, they make up their own guidance. So I would tell them what we think. And I would always say, they would ask me things, you listen to the earnings calls. Well, you missed it by a penny. I said, yeah, it's like trying to friggin' land a liner on a dime, and we missed by, like an iota of an inch. And why? Because we have humans. There's humans. Some of them came to work happy, some came to work not so happy. We didn't all make it work out that way. Very rarely do you miss because it's some massive structural issue that you had. It's because a day ended, it ended a day earlier, those kinds of things. So I tried to be very clear about where shareholders should worry, what they should worry about, and where they shouldn't. And by the way, it didn't always work. I think on average, it was average. It wasn't spectacular. I'm on the board of 2 companies that very different approaches. One doesn't give guidance, and one doesn't care. The same company doesn't care. Very, very large, stubborn as all day is long, and willing to say, you don't like it? Pick up and move to another company. Another one that gives guidance and very, very concerned about, literally the whole call is around what we didn't do versus what we said. And it's just 2 different approaches. I don't know if there's a better way I don't know if there'll be a massive, like, universal cleanup of this, but I think CEOs have to, and business leaders, CEOs and boards, have to kind of stop this crap where I say it all the time, fire them. So you'll get a different job somewhere else, or you'll at least get this amazingly large package and not have to work anymore. And so if that's what, it's kind of like we're running to conform to something. I'm not really sure okay. I remember when we had an activist, and I said one day to one of my board members, who was really, really cool, I had a cool board at this time, I said, does he understand that if he gets what he wants, I walk away with, like, more money than God? Really, I mean, that can't be the motivation, right? The motivation has to be, so my pushing against him was kind of economically unself-interested. But it was, until I finally thought about it, I said, well, this is kind of silly. Why wouldn't I do this? Why wouldn't you have a change of control? Everything kind of fixes. It's really beautiful. Because it wasn't right. Because it would have been, because first of all, there's a story I'll tell you in a minute, but it wasn't right. A lot of people would have been negatively affected by it, shareholders included. I thought, that was my belief. I may have been wrong, but that's what they hired me to do, so I did it. The other thing that I was going to tell you, a side story, is early on I learned that $150,000 is not that different than $130,000. And $1 million is not that different than 2. And 10 is literally not that different than 100. And what happens is that we actually judge all of our success on these increments. You're going to get to a point really early in your life, I hope, that you'll find that the money don't make a damn bit of difference. I got there early, and it took me quicker than I thought. Not that I made a whole lot of money, but that I realized that the thing that I would get with the next bucket of money was, what, another car, another building, another what? And what I had to do was get my kids settled, so my family settled, right? My mother, who had by this time died, anybody who was in that genre of people, then your kids, and then I call it this circle around your kids, you know, things that you're really, other things that you care about or interested in, and then every other penny was discretion. And we actually we lose sight of that totally. And I will, if you could map my life, I make a ton of money, and the incremental dollar today, I like it, but I really like it, but it really doesn't do, if it stopped today, it would make no difference. There are other things that if they stopped, it would be a real problem. And so we should just make sure we're really clear about those things and kind of overweight our efforts there. And if money allows you to do some of those things, that's good, but that can't be the engine can't run on that alone, on the money alone, right?
Thanks again for being here. I'm just curious, for the people of color in the room and women in these companies, oftentimes you have to do things above and beyond your core role, or you're picking up extra tasks, whether it's like leading employee resource groups or organizing events and stuff like that. I'm curious if there's any guidance you have as we kind of move into our new employers.
Your responsibility.
What our responsibilities are.
It is your responsibility. You just do it. People did it for you. Somebody did it for you. Somebody did it for the white guys at some point as well. They just happened to, it happened a long time ago, right? And so but everybody gets there by other people helping them. And I've heard this question lately everywhere I go, which is a new theme. I literally, up until this year, I have never heard it before. Never heard it before. But Vernon Jordan, for example, this guy spends 50% of his time, insane, writing notes, calling you out of the blue. It's just insane. You wonder, how the hell does this guy do this? He's done. He's totally done. He could pass on this. And by the way, he does it to me, and I'm like 3/4 of the time done, and I still need his help, and he calls. He does it to Tim. And so I say, line up and do it, and you should, if you're not doing a lot of it, you're being selfish. You've got to do a lot of it.
Yeah, Vernon, I mean, is amazing. I talked to him last night. He's laboring over a commencement speech. And he's, it's a month away.
Yeah.
He is, I want to touch these kids. I want to touch them in a way that they'll never forget, and I want to touch them in a way that's relevant to what's going on today in the world.
And he'll do that. He spoke at Rankin Chapel last week. I didn't see it, but I got the film. I talked to him beforehand. He was crazed about this because it's that important that he do the right thing. I think it's required. It's required, and I think it's valuable, and it makes you better. It makes you better. So I say, line up and do it.
Hi.
You got to go over here too, because we got nobody over here. But go ahead.
I'll be brief. Thank you for being here. Could you speak to your learning process to deal with failure, and at what point in your career do you think you got to a pretty good level of handling failure moments?
I have never really been in a situation where I didn't fail. I have school, everything. So dealing with failure for me was one of these. I didn't have a high expectation that I would always succeed. I didn't have a high expectation that I would always succeed. So I my approach to dealing with failure is that everybody must be failing too at something, and just keep trying, right? Just try again, try again, try again. And one of the things I say to my kids today, which is a big deal, my mother would say it to me as well, is if you do it wrong twice, it's not called failure, it's called stupidity. My mother had these unbelievable sayings. And she said, if you do it wrong 3 times, it's not called stupidity, it's called jail. And that's how I approached everything, right? So you mess up something, and some things you don't mess up because there's no need to mess it up, it's really straightforward. But if you're doing something that other people haven't done before, it's very unlikely, or at least you haven't done, or people that you are hanging around haven't done, it's high likelihood that you're gonna mess some part of it up. So I never really think about it I've never thought about it that way. That's one. Now, when I got older, the failure mechanisms, the results of the failures were huge, right? The bigger they get. The bigger you get, the bigger they get. And I always say you gotta be able to fail fast. You know, you hear this all the time, fail fast and fail small. But I mean, if you're trying to avoid either of those 2 things, you're not gonna do anything. But you gotta at least not fail really big. You know, I didn't blow up any plants, which I ran manufacturing for a long time. That was a big, big, big deal. We didn't buy anything that was so friggin' disastrous. These are the kind of things that you look at failing that way. And every other failure it's just life. So I don't really think about it. I've never really thought about it that way. From the perspective of successes, no failures.
Okay, we have 2 more questions, so you get to pick, Ursula.
We'll do 3. Maybe 4, but we'll start with you back. Say your name. Chijuki, okay. CJ.
Thank you very much for being here. I really like your macro comments on. Use your microphone. Your macro comments on like the rights to like food and shelter and education, because I think it's a better alternative than universal basic income of just handing people cash. But I was just I've been thinking about this a little bit, and, you know, just in terms of the rule you talked about, the Wilson rule, and if we are pushing for the wrong outcomes, right? And I'm thinking that what if we step back and say we prioritize differently, right? So in my mind, I think that a better measure in a better world would be something I call returns on empathy. And then I'll pay people like teachers, people like nurses, people like doctors who do real empathy work that build people up much more. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, maybe sliding scale, you know, with, I don't know, maybe.
So bankers will be paid nothing.
Yeah, bankers will be at the other end. And, you know, what are your thoughts on that? Because that way we can allow people.
I think it won't work.
Well,
let me tell you what I say. I think it won't work. I didn't even let you finish the comment. But I think that we have to pay teachers, nurses, significantly more money than we pay them. I think that this is ridiculous. I mean, we pack our kids up.
The good news is on Wednesday, Rich Trumka is coming, and so he's going to fix all that.
He's going to fix all that? I hope Rich Trumka is going to fix it. That's going to be happy. We're going to all be happy.
Well, for the teachers.
For the teachers, yeah. By the way, it's really important because what we do, think about what we do. We literally give birth to these little things, we pack them up and we ship them off to these people and we pay them $5 an hour to take care of our kids for like 8. You would say if it were you, you would want to pay them a lot more per hour, right? That's what we're doing, basically, when we pay teachers and nurses and these kind of people less money. I think we have to pay them less money. I mean, more money. I think that, but it's not a comparator. It's not a comparator. I don't think we could do this by saying this job is more valuable than that job. I think that teachers and the like need more. Bankers probably need less. I don't know, but I don't want to get into that debate, really. I just want to say this role is very valuable for society, very valuable and valued by society. Let's just get our asses together and pay them more money. And a lot of the reasons Trumka should be able to help this because unions are not the best solutions to this problem. But not having them wouldn't make the problem either. I'm talking about teachers very specifically. It doesn't enable it, and it definitely doesn't enable it, but they won't necessarily break it either. I think something fundamentally different has to be done there. But I don't think it's a comparator. I don't think we can say that lawyers are useless or should be paid less, and I think they probably should, but I'm not even going to get into that debate. I just want to pay the people who should be paid more and more. By the way, I think bankers do get paid too much money, particularly bankers. No, not because I don't like them. I just think it's the value that they create is not equivalent to the money that they get. That's all. You don't have a name, so I can't.
I know, I'm sorry. I snuck in here. My name is Melissa.
My daughter's name is Melissa. Makes it worthwhile.
So I actually graduated from the executive format program in May, and I'm on faculty at the hospital as an MD. So I was an MD and went back and got an MBA, and transitioned my career into like healthcare operations. So the eventual goal of like running health systems or whatever. And so the question that I have for you is, now I'm starting to think about mentorship. And how do you get to the next level? And it seems like that is a very important component to this that we don't necessarily discuss within your educational programming. And so I want to get your advice on if you think it's important to be a formalized mentorship, and any advice on like how to seek those people out.
Yeah, I'm not a really big fan of formalized mentorship. Actually, more than not a big fan. I think it's programmatic, and that's not what mentors are. They're not that kind of thing. I think you can have advisors who advise you to do X or Y or Z, that's fine. But I think mentors have to be a little bit more personal than that. And that's one. And I think formalized programs in these kinds of things don't work well that way. I do believe it's really helpful to have people who help guide you. And if you can, it is rare, but amazing if you can get somebody who you like and who likes you, who can guide you. The combination is really hard to find. Right? When I say like, not like, that, I mean like. Well, I'm being very descriptive, like. But I think it's really important to find somebody. And generally what happens is the following. We walk into the room and we say, well, Tim Collins runs Ripplewood. I want Tim to be my mentor. Ursula runs Xerox, she's gonna be my mentor. And I say this to people all the time, I would be the most useless mentor in your world. I have no relevance to your current situation. You add very little to me except for fun, so we should kind of become mentors, mentees a little bit later, when it's a little bit closer, where we can have a little bit more discussion about some real world choices. I found my best mentors one of my best was my general counsel in my old company. Amazing guy who literally would tell me without hesitation when I was screwing up and when I was doing well. And it wasn't like you're screwing up. It was really like, so he knew me, he knew my family situation. He didn't know the family, but he knew enough about me to say, I see this coming. You're in a really bad mood. You're not thinking through things. You're shutting people out, or this is a pattern that you're going through, or they ask you to be on this board. What the hell are you doing that for? Or why didn't you do this? Amazing guy, younger than I was, and really, really good. So I say about mentors is don't shoot high, which is what we're always trying to do. Find this guy up there and this guy who can help. They don't do that. They generally don't do that. They don't have time. They don't have the perspective of your next move. Find people around you who can help you. And then as you move up, develop relationships that are valuable to you and hopefully to the other person. And that helps more. Very rarely did I get a job because somebody said, I was mentored, they were a mentor to me, I had them, and they would say, Ursula should get that role. It's like, really? I mean, not at all. So I'm not really all for them, but I also know that they are valuable. I got to be the executive assistant to the chairman because somebody who actually we fought all the time recommended me. So he was and he was really senior. So I do know that there is that, but I say it has to be something that's a little bit more organic than it is managed the way that we manage them today. Last one.
Hi, my name is Alakaya. Thank you for being here. My question to you would be around leadership and team building. You talked about, particularly, I'm an aspiring entrepreneur, and you talked about people with companies, how you can spot early on by how they're able to attract leaders around them, and that they're able to tell a compelling story or present a compelling set of beliefs that make people want to work with them or work towards whatever they're moving towards. My question to you is, what are some examples of how to build that or how to deliver that message?
One of the things that one of the leaders said, he wasn't the first person who said it, but a leader that I admire a lot said that I stole, was one of the things that a leader does, is that they define reality and give hope. Right? And you think about that and you go, oh, it's really interesting, but that is actually what it is. So here's where we are. Sometimes reality is good, right? So hope is extra. Sometimes a lot of times reality is bad and hope is all you have, right? And I think that, and in companies I mean that as well, in departments and companies. So this idea that you kind of know where you stand as a company and you have a really good idea of where you want to go, and that we're going to work together to define that path, the reality and the hope of what goodness looks like is a really important thing. The other one is that people, I always say, when you walk into the door, right? So when you walk past the threshold of the door, I actually don't spend a lot of time caring about your personal beliefs. You may not like women, you may not like black people, I don't particularly like Jewish people, I would prefer everybody who spoke Spanish. All that stuff is all good. And the good news is that you can do that in your house. You just can't do it in my house, right? So I want people who actually walk in almost blind to their skill set. So I want my lawyer to be a lawyer, but when I walk in my team room, the last thing that we need is a guy to tell me what's legal. If we're doing something way off there. I want somebody who actually can walk in and tell me a way to get things done, a way to progress and move forward with the expertise that he has. So this ability to listen and to have expectations that people speak, to show failure when silence is the solution. When silence is the solution, I have 7 people on my team, 8 with me, 7 other members on my team. If I have to, so we didn't make enough money this quarter, what are we going to do next quarter? This is what I would get. And the answer is, all of you get the hell out of here. I'll keep all of your money, right? You just pay me all the money, because if I have to think of all the solutions too, it's not fair. So what I want, right, because we're paying you a lot of money to not be silent. What I want, and what you have to kind of engender from people by literally calling it. Tell me what the hell you're thinking. How to do this. There's nothing bad except for, I don't like blacks, Hispanic, these kind of innate biases that we have. Everything else is allowed. Let's come in. I want people, I used to say all the time, when I went out when I became CEO of Xerox and through my whole CEO, I would go to a place, Yale or operating company in wherever, Brazil, and they would meet me at the airport. They would set up all these meetings with government officials. I would do communication sessions with the public. I would have communication sessions with all of the people as many as they can get together. My general counsel goes to Brazil, his lawyers pick him up, then he comes home after a couple of days and he said he had a successful trip. And I said, no, you didn't. Because what you did is left all of that stuff that I did when I went to Brazil to me. You should go and represent the company like you're me, right? Because very few people in the company will ever see the GC. They think you're God anyway. You're one of the top 5, act like it, meaning you don't have to be picked up and all that stuff, but you should know enough about the company, have a point of view about the company. You should know my proclivities as well as the leader of the company, and you should be able to stand up and carry the weight of the company with you everywhere that you go. And that's what I'm looking for. I look for people who are really reaching way beyond their remit, come without portfolio, go do it. And by the way, that's hard to do, so when people do it, you have to kind of pull them back sometimes because they messed up, they said something wrong somewhere, but I very rarely run into that problem. I run into more of a problem of this nothing said. I like, who was here? Nobody came to visit me. I was in Greece. Nobody came to visit me. I said, well, Don was here. Yeah, but Don just met with the lawyers. I'm like, why did you go to Greece if you're going to meet with the lawyers only? You can do that by phone, right? Show the company flag. It's an example of the kind of team that you want around you. Expert at something, but not barred, not narrowed by that expertise.
That was terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. I was 20 pounds lighter here. This is an aspirational picture again. Thank you.
Do a picture of the two of you.
Sure.
Please pull up your football.